Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the POST-GRAD Playbook podcast brought to you by Gear Up Team here with the Santa Cruz County School Superintendent's Office. I am your coach, Manny Gonzalez, and I am very happy to keep bringing you episodes through our office and this post-graduation playbook, POST-GRAD playbook, information that could be useful to students and anybody for the life after high school, for graduation, and anybody that's education seeking. We try to bring you information that is relevant to what's going on these days, guests and everybody as well too that have the experiences and information that could be useful to you. And today I am honored and humbled to bring in such an awesome guest that will be giving us his background and is, in my opinion, a very prominent figure in this county. And I am more than excited to have with us today Judge Miguel Lopez. I am so happy you are here. Wow. I was excited when you said yes and they were able to. I mean, when you shared your excitement to even be with us, I thought it was awesome because I never expected this podcast to start evolving so quickly. We had ideas, we had thoughts, we have topics like today's would be relocating versus staying, and who better than the individuals we know. So you being here means a lot to us, and I can't thank you enough for your time. And welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Manny, for inviting me. Also to Gear Up for putting this thing together. To have podcast is an amazing kind of source of information for people to have conversation, to have discussion. So, and also to Superintendent's Office for putting it all together. So I really appreciate you giving me the time to come here and talk to you and talk to your audience. I think it is a really important conversation, and it's something that, we don't think a lot about what the pros and cons are, because it's all kind of, when you're thinking about school and where you're going to go to school and what you're going to do, it's all kind of just theoretical, and then it happens. And then it becomes, reality becomes a whole other thing. So I'm glad that we're addressing those topics. It's something that affected me as a kid when I went away to school as a young adult. And so I relish the opportunity to kind of talk it out with you.
Absolutely. And I think it's true how you say that. We think about it, but once it actually comes time to graduate and say, it's time, what are we going to do? Mm-hmm. I know I was one of those students as well too, just lost and confused about everything too, and just lack of information at the time is kind of what did me in. Leaving to Tucson, kind of an unexpected thing, and not really knowing what to do with my life was just so rough. So then the decision came to leave for the military. It took me away from home. And it was a culture shock, being because we're such a tight-knit community, and the Hispanic race as well, to being so close with families and everything too. Leaving was such an interesting thing. So if you can you tell us a little bit about your background? What led you to getting about? And you're born and raised.
Born and raised in Nogales. So, in Nogalitos and then Monte Carlo. So, I had my little bike gang there and
Absolutely.
the whole thing. Went to Nogales High School, and at 17, I was a really ambitious kid, and I always had this idea in my mind of what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go. And when it came to applying for college, I was really open-minded. I applied to a bunch of different schools. Are you first generation? Were you the first in your family to go away?
Yes.
To the military?
First gen to attend a college, also first gen leaving.
Yeah. Me too. So it was really kind of, there was no guidance, there was no playbook, there was no one that would kind of guide me through it. A lot of it was teachers, guidance counselors. We didn't have Gear Up back then, but I'm sure you guys would have been a huge resource for me. Because I was learning as I went. I literally chose schools based on, their little, what do you call those, like little preview books that they have?
Their welcome pamphlets and everything too.
Like I would just look at pictures and be like, oh, that looks like a cool school. I'll put that one on that side and that one on that side. But I had a real sense of where I wanted to go in terms of career path. And so that helped me a lot. That was kind of like the guiding force where I was making decisions. But anyway, I ended up getting into a few schools and then decided to go to Washington, D.C. So I went to George Washington University as an undergrad. And then I was there for 4 years. I did a double major. I did Latin American Studies, and I did International Affairs at the Elliott School. And then from there, I decided to go to law school, came back to Arizona to ASU. My dream was to go to Cardozo, but after GW, and this is something that we should talk about, my total cost for undergrad was so big that I didn't have enough money after it to kind of choose a grad school based on just where I wanted to go. I had to really think about the money, and ASU gave me a full ride plus a stipend. And so even though I got into Cardozo and I really wanted to go there, and I was, you know, my ambition was leading me to Manhattan, I didn't really have the financial means to get there unless I was going to come out, you know, triple what I already had in debt.
Yeah.
So I decided to take the plunge and come back to ASU, which in hindsight was a great opportunity. You know, not paying for law school is something that you just can't give up.
Yeah.
You can't like kind of put that aside. And the Sandra O'Connor Law School at ASU, Sandra Day O'Connor, is an amazing school. I learned a lot of basically everything that I needed to learn. I learned there, and it didn't kind of stop me from then living out my dream of going to Manhattan, because the day I graduated law school, I was on a plane to go to Manhattan. And
so it was just nonstop.
Oh no, I was driven to go to Manhattan. I just didn't know how I was going to get there.
Yeah.
The one thing I do have to say is that graduating from law school, I didn't have the same contacts as people who went to NYU Law or Cardozo or Columbia. You know, they came out of it and they already had done summer internships. They had
I see.
Those connections were kind of built. You know, they had a place to live. I was like, you know, couch surfing in Queens and jumping the I didn't jump any turnstiles, but it was hard to even get subway fare sometimes for me, or like a slice of pizza, because I went with like $200 in my pocket.
Gotcha.
And I worked a part-time job coat checking at a Cuban restaurant while I studied for the bar. And so it wasn't just like, you know, I showed up and like, there you go, Manhattan at your feet.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It seems like that's what a lot of people don't think about too. As we have our success story that it evolved into, but a lot of people don't forget. I mean, they don't seem to think about, okay, we're in Nogales. We have a lot of the things that we need right then and there. Or even if you go to Phoenix and Tucson, they feel like it's like, oh, I can just come back home if I need something. Or But taking a leap such as that, even right out of high school, going to GW, and then coming back, finishing up here, and then headed to New York, it just seems like there was challenge upon challenge. And it seems to me that a lot of students don't think about that part. I'm glad that the ambition's there, that they want to leave. Yeah. But I feel like more information could be presented to them as, remember the challenges, you're going somewhere different, and it's not Nogales anymore. That bubble is about to explode into a whole different melting pot. Well,
and I think we take for granted the fact that we have a built-in support system, you know, because it's more than the obvious. It's more than just the financial. It's emotional. It's, you know, someone just to talk to. It's like growing up in a small community is beautiful because you have that tight-knit community, but you almost start to take for granted that you have this built-in support system. And the truth is that Nogales is supportive in all different kinds of ways. You know, like you can't go anywhere in Nogales without someone being in your business, but that in a certain kind of way is also a support system. And
it is.
So when you leave that little kind of nurturing space and you go to a place where you know no one knows you, no one knows your background, it can be freeing, it can be liberating in a lot of ways. Like nobody cares about you or where you come from or who you are. But it's also really intimidating, and that is what, for me, was the biggest culture shock. I mean, I was just kind of like, oh my God, I have no frame of reference. My identity was in question. You know, I didn't really know who I was in that environment, you know, where nobody knew me, where nobody knew my name, where nobody knew who my mom was or who my dad was or how I was going to eat that day, or you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no doubt about it.
So it was a big culture shock, especially at 17, without having laid a foundation for going out there. It was basically done with high school, did a summer job at the county attorney's office, and then was on a plane, and then I showed up in DC with like no kind of real direction or like, you know, someone to kind of guide me into like that transition.
Yeah. So would you say that, in a sense, is it a pro and a con to leave Arizona?
Well, I think I can't really say it's a con, because it's an opportunity to kind of grow in a way that you couldn't grow if you were local and you always knew that you could come back on the Friday afternoon and stay through the Sunday afternoon and kind of have that kind of, but I guess the con for me would be you have to be aware that those things are going to come back at you. You know what I mean? That you're going to one day be, oh my God, I miss my family. I miss my community. I miss these things. And that if you don't have a way of dealing with those kind of emotional stuff that's going to happen, then you're going to find yourself really in a tough spot.
Oh, absolutely.
So
I think that could even happen locally as well too. I think I mean, when I left to Tucson for the first time, I didn't realize 45-minute away type of thing. I didn't think it was going to be that big a deal, but that first night hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, dang, I don't have my mom and dad here anymore. It's like, who's going to cook or what am I doing?
Yeah. Well, it could happen anywhere, like you're leaving your home, you're leaving your little comfort zone. But I think for me, I guess in retrospect, if I look at it from now as a 50-year-old man looking back at my 17-year-old self, I probably would have, the only con I can really think is, did I have the financial knowledge?
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Definitely.
Did I plan out financially what my future was going to be? Because if I had had that opportunity to kind of get educated in terms of what it was going to cost me financially to go and do that for the first 4 years out of high school, I think now that in retrospect, I probably would have made a different decision. I'm still paying off that student loan from GW, and I probably will pay it till the day I die. Yeah. So there's a lot of factors that go into that. Like also when I refinanced my student debt, it was at a time when student loan interest rates for student loans was a lot higher than it is today. So I'm paying like 8% on $200,000, whereas today the interest rate is much lower, and so maybe that decision would change for me a little bit. But I think those kinds of things that you don't think about when you're 17, like I signed a bunch of Pell Grant loan documents, and I'd never thought about like what it was going to mean for how long I was going to have to pay that, how much the interest would be once it got compounded. And like those things didn't make sense to me. They didn't even they didn't come into the calculation for me. It was more about what I wanted to study and where I wanted to study as opposed to what it was going to cost me.
That makes sense. And then it's a lot of times too, how you say it's like with these loans, a lot of the information doesn't seem to be really out there on what to look for, how to actually accept them through, like even if it's the FAFSA or something like that, like the whole subsidized, unsubsidized stuff. So it could get tricky, especially for folks that are going to leave here, because I would imagine the costs of tuition and everything else outside of the state obviously are a lot higher. Yeah. I mean, I would imagine that had an effect.
Well, that, and like for me anyway, it's not just the cost of tuition, and it's also how are you going to live once you get there?
Every other factor.
Every other factor. Like, public transportation costs you something. Food costs you something. Room and board is going to cost you something. And so you kind of have to think about all those things, And I think what I most regretted once I got to DC was that I hadn't really thought through the finances. And so I ended up working 3 part-time jobs while I was taking a full load on a double major. Jeez. So there was like 0 time for me to be social in a way that I think would have benefited the experience for me. Because I think when you go away to those schools and you have all these things at your fingertips and you have options for the first time in your life to look at new kind of organizations and be active in different kinds of communities, if you don't give yourself the time because you're constantly working, then you miss out. And I think that was one of my biggest regrets, is that I didn't give myself the time to go and join the Latin American Student Association and be active in politics and, intern at the White House. I just didn't have the time or the ability to take an unpaid internship. Like I worked pretty much a 30-hour work week between my 3 jobs if I could piece it together. And I was always just running around. But, like even the things like books, when it came to books and you had to buy them at the beginning of the semester and it was $900, I was like, there's no way I don't have $900. So I quickly figured out there's workarounds, like I quickly figured out that through a library consortium, I could order all the books that I needed for my semester. I just had to plot it out and go into the library and order them from the consortium in order of syllabus. And I would, constantly be in the library checking out books. But, it saved me $1,000 at the end of the day. I mean, it's things that don't come to the forefront of your mind when you're thinking about going to school.
That is true. And I think a lot of the times, too, with students, when we talk to them about, even when they want to just leave to somewhere, for example, like Phoenix. Yeah. they want to focus so much on studies and everything too. But I think that's when a lot of the stress starts to come in. It's like you got to take in your surroundings as well too. And I think that applies to a lot of people, even if they just leave to Tucson. Obviously, we want people to succeed, study as much as they can, but I think they forget about their own well-being as far as like mental health and all that stuff when they leave. That them taking on their studies, I feel like, yes, great and everything too, but if they want to avoid the stress or the fear of failure, they need to take time for themselves and explore the areas that they're at.
Yeah, sometimes you want to do sports. Sometimes you want to just veg. Sometimes you want to hang out with friends. You know, like you need to build that into your experience. Otherwise, it becomes a one-note experience, and it's probably not good for the long term because it doesn't make it sustainable for you as a person. But, you know, it does have really rewarding. Anyway, in my mind, it was really rewarding for me to be able to go out of state because I feel like I got an experience from living in a kind of urban environment. I got to meet a lot of different people in terms of diversity. You know what I mean? I did not know African American people. I did not know Asian American people. I was like one of 3 Mexican American people in my class. So that was a huge experience for me to kind of like get to know other cultures, other kinds of people. And that I think was the most valuable thing that I took away other than the education, you know. But in that conversation of like, what's right for you? What's a better decision, stay or go? I think it has a lot of pros to go, you know, like that exposure.
Yeah.
But I also think it depends on the individual. Like how focused are you on what you want to do?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, because if you're undecided and you don't know what path you're really thinking about going, then does it really make sense to go and then pay a whole lot more money for exploration and trying to figure it out?
Exactly. And that's where I think staying is the best bet for undecided folks. In your case, would you say that your experiences and everything else led to the successful career that you have?
I wish I could say that it was like a very kind of defined path, but for me, it was just, I can't really say it was fate or destiny, but it was kind of just the way it worked out for me. I'm a very hardworking person, and so I think that was the biggest factor in my success. I did not give up. You know, I'm not a quitter. And so there was a lot of adversity in my path. It snaked around in Manhattan for a long time. You know, I went from all different kinds of firms doing different kinds of law. And it didn't really gel for me until I was about 33. That's when I started to get a lot of momentum in my career. But for that first chunk of time that I was working as a lawyer in Manhattan, it was hit or miss, you know, like there was things I liked, there was things I didn't like, and that was good for me to kind of explore and go from a really big firm that was 500 lawyers worldwide to a small firm that was like 5 lawyers doing civil rights. You know, for me, it was like, okay, I did this big firm experience where I was doing like multinational litigations, and then I went to a tiny firm that was doing civil rights. And the difference in pay was dramatic. Like you could make $100,000 starting in one firm, and I was making 26 at the other. Yeah. So like there was a huge discrepancy on the amount of money and what would motivate me to kind of make those decisions. But I chose civil rights because for me it felt right, you know, and that also kind of put me behind the pack in like a lot of the people that I went to law school with who were then making a lot more money than me. And maybe that is their way of thinking about success. For me, success means something else. For me, success means how am I making a valuable contribution to my community? How am I defending the rights of people who can't speak for themselves? Yes. How can I stand up for the things that I know are right? And that comes from who I am, and that is from this community. Like I grew up in a town and in a community, in a culture that taught me right from wrong. So for me, it's a very clear decision. It's not about money for me. I mean, the money's nice. I'm not going to say no.
Yeah, I think everybody would agree.
But for me, it was more about the decision to do the right thing. And so that kind of took me towards a different direction, I think. And it kind of snaked back into a more lucrative career because from that experience, I learned a lot and then kind of developed as a lawyer. So it kind of it opened other doors for me. So
Did at any point before you graduated high school, for example, did you ever consider staying here, or do you feel like your career would have ended up a completely different way if you had stayed?
I asked myself that question a lot. Like, how would my life be different? Especially since I came back. You know, I came back about 3 years ago. Now in my third year back, and the difference between living in Manhattan for 25 years to living in Rio Rico is drastic. You know,
I can imagine.
It's like a culture shock in reverse.
Yeah.
Because if you think about, you know, I'm 50 now. I left here at 17. The majority of my life was lived on the East Coast in an urban environment. So it's different. I mean, I've always been a kid from Nogales. I'll always be that kid. But and my heart has always been here. I've always, in the back of my mind, thought I'm coming back to do something here.
Yeah.
But I do think about, like, what would have happened had I gone to the U of A, or even come back to law school at the U of A, and then ended up working locally. A good friend of mine is a lawyer here in town, and he did the opposite. He stayed. You know, we went to law school together. We were great friends. We studied together. I saw his first kid was born while we were at law school. And Luis Parra, who's here, has a really successful career, really homegrown practice. And I look at it and I think, well, that could have been me, you know, like I could have done that. And I could have been here making integral decisions about this community this whole time. And instead I was out there in New York without making an impact where it really mattered. Because, you know, no matter how hard I tried in New York, I was never going to make a bigger impact, you know, on the community there. It's too big.
It's just like a bigger melting pot of people from all over the place. I can imagine.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, I asked myself that question a lot. Like, had I done it different, would I have made a bigger impact? I don't know. All I can tell you is that lived experience that I've had, I wouldn't trade it. You know, I had a great experience in undergrad. I had a great experience at law school back at ASU, and I would do it over again. I don't think that there's any experience about being in GW that I regret, really. It showed me a lot about the world. And, you know, it gave me the opportunity to study abroad in Madrid for a year.
Oh, wow.
It gave me the opportunity to meet people from all different kinds of cultures. You know, there was a huge amount of kids that were from embassies that were going to college there because their parents worked at embassies. So I learned about the Palestinian culture, all different kinds of Middle Eastern cultures, all different kinds of European cultures, you know, and South American cultures. You know, there was a very vibrant kind of environment, and that's what I needed as a kid. You know, I needed to see all different kinds of perspectives.
I think that's what helped me out too. Leaving for the military was kind of at first a scary thought. And then once I get there to my first duty station, even though it was close by, I still got to meet so many different people. But the biggest thing for me about when I left, I felt I grew more as a person.
Yeah.
And that I continue to do so because I thought I was going to be a 4-year contract and done, like a lot of people tend to do. But I ended up re-enlisting again, moved to Virginia, started in those areas out in DC as well too. And like just the thing that I love the most about it is how you say it's just so many different cultures you get to mix into, and the things you learn from them and everything too, to a point where I thought I was going to make a big career out of it. But I came back in 2018. Came back home after for a good while too, being outside of Arizona. But at one point I didn't think I was coming back. But then I was like, you know what, I wanted to start a family, have my own son and everything too. And coming back this way, after learning so much, I felt like I had so much more to offer at that point.
Yeah.
So it sounds to me like as well with you, leaving and the experiences that you had, even as busy as you were, still all the things that you learned culminated into something amazing that you were able to bring back this way.
Yeah.
So
it took a while for me to come full circle, but it definitely was worth the journey, I think. But getting back to this, like, stay or go kind of thing. And I was saying, if you have laser focus and you know what you want to do, and you know that that's something that is going to be, you're going to be successful at, then by all means, you know, go for it. I would never say to someone, don't do that. But I do think that if I had not had that laser focus, like, you know, I wanted to go work at the State Department, at the Foreign Service. I knew that I wanted to have a career at the time I thought I was going to do international affairs. I wanted to go to the Elliott School. It was like it was tailor made for me for what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But if you know that you're going to go to med school and you know that that's something that you want to do, then go to the best college where you can do pre-med that you can possibly go to.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Whether that be here, whether that be far away, wherever it is.
Mm-hmm.
If you're still kind of undecided and you don't know, and you kind of like business, but you kind of like art, or you kind of like this, you kind of like that, and you just want to kind of explore it, there's no reason why you can't do that while saving yourself some money.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And going to a community college, like, I don't sleep on the value of community college. That is a place where you can go to kind of figure out where your strengths are, what you like, what you want to ultimately do.
Mm-hmm.
If you know that you want to do nursing and you are laser focused on nursing, then you don't need to, I mean, maybe you do, but you don't need to go all the way across the country and pay triple what you would pay instead of just going to some, a local university. Mm-hmm. If that's something that you can get, I mean, you go to the U of A and you can get an amazing education and get a nursing degree right here. Although, if you have a sense of adventure and you're just decide, like, I don't want to do that here, I want to do it in Texas or California or Hawaii or wherever it is that you want to do it, then that's a decision you have to make. But
For sure.
There are costs to that, is what I guess it comes down to, and you have to be willing to pay those costs. And those costs are financial, emotional, because you're not going to have that basic support that you are used to having. And the other one, I think, is just kind of internal. Like, you have to be able to be self-sufficient in a way,
Mm-hmm. Oh,
And
for sure. And you prove a good point. I mean, it does sound, going out of state makes it just sounds easier if you know what you want.
Mm-hmm.
I fully agree with that statement. And then the whole undecidedness, I much rather would have stayed here. I thought I knew what I wanted and I didn't. But I still ended up staying. But that's what I try to get across to students who talk to me about going out of state. Are you sure you know what you want? But I see a lot of indecisiveness still when they tell them, what do you want to study? And someone was like, well, teaching, but I think I want to leave. I'm like, okay, but do you know where? What do you want to teach? What kind of age groups? So it's just interesting to see that the whole differences between I have a major and I'm dead set, and I have an idea, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Well, things are going to happen. You know what I mean? So even if you are dead set on what you want to do, I was dead set that I was going to go to the State Department. Mm-hmm. And then I got there and I was like, maybe I want to go to law school. Maybe there's a different way for me. Mm-hmm. It didn't. If I had gotten a job at the Foreign Service, then I would probably just have gone that route. But I didn't get a job at the Foreign Service. So then I was kind of like, should I go to the State Department or should I go to law school? And for me, law school seemed like a better choice. I think about that all the time. Like, had I taken a job at the State Department, would it be different? Would my life be different? And probably I never would have gone to Manhattan. I would have stayed in D.C. and it would have been a whole other ballgame. But what I'm getting at is things will change in that road. Like, you may be dead set your freshman year that you're going to do biology because you want to do pre-med and you're going to do sciences the whole way. And then you get there and, it seems like you enjoy literature. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't know.
And it's crazy how that's so true, though. Like, so many people change careers in their own head so many times. And I try to tell that to students. It's like, look, you're probably going to think, I want to go into architecture, but you realize you're horrible at math like I was. Or maybe you do want to become a doctor, but then you start realizing you're a little squeamish. And I like what you say about it's not just one straight line. It never will be. We have to have a plan A through Z. And if we run out of letters, then start putting numbers in there, like plan 1 through infinite, because you're never going to run out.
And ultimately, that's what your undergraduate years are about. It's trying to figure out what best suits you. Mm-hmm. And sometimes even the most decided people end up figuring something else out. So I was one of those people. I was one of those people who was super decided and then ended up doing something a little bit different. So I think that there's definitely value in taking the time, giving yourself the space to figure it out early on. Without having to pay an exorbitant amount of money because you can always transfer. You can transfer. You're undecided. Do a couple of years in a community college or at a local university, and then transfer to where you want to go. Or think about saving that money, which is something I wish I would have done. Is save that money so that when I could have gone to the grad school that I wanted. I would have loved to have gone to Manhattan and done law school at Cardozo. It just wasn't in the cards for me at that point. Yeah. So it's just something that I think people make the decision, a decision in the moment about what they're doing right then, right there. You know what I mean? And you kind of have to take a little moment to kind of stand back, look at the whole picture before you make a decision. That's what I think is important. If you know you're going to go to graduate school, then maybe think to yourself, okay, maybe I save the money now up front. The one thing is you have to do really well in undergraduate no matter where you go.
Yes.
So if you're looking to go to grad school, you know that you've got to be on point. You've got to study. You've got to do well. You've got to do the best you can so that you can get into the best grad school that you want to go to.
Mm-hmm. And to bring up something you said before too, the fact that you don't sleep on the value of a community college is, and that we get a bunch of questions on that. Parents are worried that the student's education at a community college won't be valued as much as going straight to university. And we're there to explain. I'm like, yes, it will be. You're just taking your basic courses at a community college where you're paying less money, as opposed to if you take those same classes at a major university, you're paying a lot more. And yet you're still transferring. You're still going to finish that same degree plan that you want. Or if you're still undecided, you have time to think about it.
Per credit hour, you're paying a whole lot more money if you're talking about taking like college algebra. You're talking about taking bio for non-science majors. If you're thinking about taking your basic English course, you know. And I think for me, it would have made a lot of sense to kind of knock out some of those stuff locally and kind of transition slowly into like, okay, now I'm going to the East Coast. And really I could have gone to the U of A tuition free. And I wish that I had done that because it would have saved me a whole lot of money. Also, I would have had a stellar education because the U of A, ASU, they offer stellar education. It's up to the individual about how, you know, if they take advantage of it. Had I gone to Pima to take the first 2 years, knocked out a bunch of my intro courses, and then saved a bunch of money, and then transferred into the U of A and finished off there and gotten a degree in Latin American studies, I'm sure that I would have been at the top of my class, and then I would have had my pick of law school.
That makes sense.
You know, it's just in retrospect, it seems like it makes more sense to me. But that drive that I had, I would never have fallen short or like stopped at my first year at Pima, you know, just because I had the drive. And I think that's what you have to think about is that once you start, if you really want to get that degree, it takes persistence. You can't.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean? There's a million things that are going to come up that are going to kind of put you in a place where you don't finish. You know?
And that's what I think they forget that. And that might just be academic things that they're facing as well. There's like personal lives that they have to deal with, even the whole homesickness part of it all too. So that's a good point. Be focused on what you want, but be prepared. Like have those different plans set out because you never know what can happen. In state or out of state.
Yeah, and the world is going to happen around you. You know, there's no question.
There's
no
stopping for anybody.
So if you don't have a plan of action, like if you're not dead set that you're going to finish and that you're going to do this career, then you're probably just not going to get there. You know what I mean? You have to have focus for yourself. You know, for your own, I guess, self-determination. You have to have self-determination. You have to say, I am going to get this done. You know, it takes some people takes longer than others, but as long as you don't quit and you keep going, you know what I mean?
Sure.
You keep putting the effort in there. It might be that you may have to take a semester off. You may have to take just 2 courses instead of 4 courses, you know, as long as you keep getting there, you know, you keep that momentum going.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. That's one thing that I want to tell students myself as well too. Yes, I dropped out my first year, second year, whatever it was. I wasted so much money going after something I wasn't sure of. Did my time in the military, and that's where I found success and everything until finally later. I'm 37 now. I didn't finish my bachelor's degree until I want to say it was 33 on my birthday, December 7th of 2020. And there's no time frame for these folks either. That's why I tell them, like, if you're not so sure right away, give it some time, give it some thought. Don't put so much money into it when you know you're kind of like, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
It took me some time, and when I finally figured it out, and when I jumped from subject to subject, because I went from a couple major switches as well, from like I thought HR maybe, and I'm like no, history, no. So I found my fit in psychology finally, and it took time, but I wasn't putting myself down because I was like, oh, I'm 33, what am I gonna do in a classroom full of younger students? But there's a way. If there's a will, there's a way.
I'll tell you, when I was in law school, there were people there that were already in their 60s. They had just started law school, and to be honest, I was like, oh my God, I could barely do this now. I don't know how I could do it at their age, but Now that I'm getting closer to inching closer to that age range, but I'm not done learning. I'm not done with what I want for myself and for my life. And so it would be naive of me to say like, oh, I've done that and I'm not doing anything further. Like I'm still on that journey to learn more, to kind of, and maybe I'm not going to go to get a doctorate or something, but I will continue that course of study, if you will, to develop my mind, to learn more about the world around me. And if you have that, then there's no time frame, there's no age, there's no, it is at your own pace. It's what you want for yourself.
Yes.
And it's not just about, oh, let me finish this degree so I can get that job, so I can get that paycheck. Yeah, that's important.
Yes.
But it also is half the story. The bigger story is, what do you want for yourself in your life? Who do you want to be? Like, what do you want to develop in yourself as a person?
I like that. And it's so true. It's never a thing where somebody should feel pressured as well, too. Because if people go after something they're not really into, I don't see a success story coming out of that. Yeah. They have to be passionate about what they want. It's like kind of like hearing your story, the passion's there. And I like that you remain in a book to want to keep learning. It's something I do, and I feel like a lot of people want to do, but are unsure of how to, regardless of age. And I think they just worry about that so much too. Yeah. So what would you say? Because what is your most heartfelt advice that you would give to students that are coming up on graduation or even in their first year of colleges?
Well, one, I think what's the most important thing is follow your heart. If what your instinct is telling you that something is right, it's usually right. So don't force yourself through something because you think it's what you should do or what you're expected to do. Like, follow your heart. If you want to be an artist, be an artist. You know what I mean? If you want to be a mathematician, be a mathematician. Like, there's things in this world that are worth fighting for, and then there's stuff that's just baggage. You know what I mean? I would say follow your instinct, follow your heart, follow what you want for yourself, what you want your life to look like, whatever that means. And I say that to college kids, and I say that to high school grads. If what you think the best thing that you can do is go to Yale, and that's going to be the best thing for you, I support you 100%. I will be the first person to tell you to go to Yale. I'll also be the first person to say, here's my phone number, so when you get really crazy and homesick and like that world is like so closed and you feel like a fish out of water, because that's how I felt. Like that's what happened to me. I didn't know. I'll tell you one story. It's a little anecdote about when I went to GW. GW is a school with a lot of East Coast kids there, like upper middle class to very wealthy kids, because it's a private university and people are paying top dollar to go there.
The DMV area.
Yeah. And so all these kids would be, doing summers in Hamptons and Nantucket, in Martha's Vineyard. All those things meant nothing to me. They were like these abstract things about, oh, you guys have summer houses? We had like a summer, like
a camp spot.
Yeah, exactly. We had like Washington camp and maybe like ride our bike and maybe one night out at 4th of July, but that's about it in Patagonia. These people had like full-blown beach houses that they went away to in the summer. And they would all wear this sweatshirt or t-shirt, whatever, and had a little black dog on here. And I was always like, what is that? Like, they all have this hat with the black dog on it, or a t-shirt or sweatshirt with the black dog on it. And I was always like, what is that? Some kind of like secret club that I don't know about? It's culturally different. It's like something that you don't naturally fit into right away. And it makes you feel like an outsider. It makes you feel like you're not in the know. It makes you feel like you don't get it. And for the longest time, I was just kind of like, I didn't even want to ask, what did it mean? Because I was like, it would show my ignorance, that I was like not in that world. And it kind of made me feel a little insecure at the beginning. Like I was like, it made me feel like there's something I don't know. I'm different from these people in a way that I couldn't remedy, because as charming as I could be, as smart as I could be, I wasn't getting into that circle. it was hard for me. It was hard for me coming from a place where like you go to Safeway and you say hi to every single person, you know what I mean? Like
at Walmart.
and everybody knows you and what you want and where you're going, and people congratulate you for graduating, and people say, you know, you see them your whole life from your first communion until your graduation. It's just like one thing after another that you're like kind of accomplishing.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so that feeling of not belonging is hard. And so what I say to those kids is have a plan in place. Like, here, take my phone number, call me when you're out there and you start to feel lonely, because it's going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
Call me when you feel like you don't belong, or you don't, because I'll reinforce the fact that you earned the right to be there. And
Absolutely.
that is, at the end of the day, all that matters. That is for you because you chose it, because that's what's going to make you happy. And that's all that you need to know. The rest of it is a bunch of BS, excuse my language, but that rest of it, that thing of trying to feel like you belong, find your people. You'll find them. You know what I mean? I struggled a lot to find my people when I went to college. And I was lonely. You know, like I wandered the streets of Washington by myself a lot before I found a crew of kids that I could get along with. Mm-hmm. But they're out there and you'll find it. It's just, this too will pass is, I guess, what the thing is. You know, like this is something that is of the moment. It's not going to define your whole life. It doesn't define you. You'll come back around.
Absolutely.
You know?
There's a fit for everybody, and regardless of where they go, it's like that saying goes, the world is yours. You got to make the best of it.
Yeah.
You can't go to somewhere expecting to be 100% there the entire time and be okay, but leaving will help you grow as a person. And we'll tell you, students, you can go and make a difference somewhere else. And with individuals like us, that we came back home to make a difference here too. I think that's a thing of beauty as well too. So
yeah.
Well,
it's a gift and a curse in a lot of ways. No, I still do think about, you know, the East Coast a lot. I do miss it. Like I said, it is a lot of, in a lot of ways, it's my hometown. You know, like Manhattan is where I grew up from the age of 22, 23 to 48, you know, so.
That's a long time.
It's a long time. Like a lot of my life was spent growing up there. And, you know, it went from being, you know, couch surfing and doing that whole young thing where you never know where your next apartment is going to be or where your next job is going to be. But it always came back to who you are as a person, what your goals are. Do you have a clear sight for where you want to be? And for me, it was always like, okay, I'm going to plan my life out in very abstract ways, but I knew where I had a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, a 20-year plan. Yeah. Because without at least that general direction, then you kind of wallow around. Yeah. So I think that's another thing that's important for wherever you're going to do, if you're going to do local or you're going to do far away, is it set goals for yourself. You know, set where you want to be in 2 years, set where you want to be in 5 years, set where you want to be in 7, 10, whatever it is, however you want to break it up. But it's something to work towards, and it's something to kind of aspire to. And whether you make it there or not, on time or at your own pace, it's a direction. And if you don't have direction, then it's a lot harder to get momentum, you know?
Oh, for sure. Getting lost in the whole planning part. Like, that's another thing I've brought up too as well. It's like, yes, you can plan as much as you want, but if you don't have a clear step, the first step to take, you get lost in the mix. So it can get tricky.
Yeah. Well, and it's also just, you know, they're benchmarks, and you can say, oh, wow. You know, for the longest time in my head, I was like, I want to be a partner at a law firm by the time I'm 40. That's not an easy thing to do, especially in Manhattan. Like, you know, if you're the guy with no money and you're the guy that's just billing hours and hours and hours and hours, like, that's not an easy thing. Yeah. I was lucky enough that I was given the opportunity at around 37 to become a non-equity partner. What that means is I wasn't putting my money into the firm, so I wasn't going to get paid out the same way. Yeah. But I was going to be at a partner level. So that was a great opportunity for me, and it happened. I always said I wanted to be a partner at 40. It happened at 37. I was extremely happy, but it was because I had ticked it off the box. Did it make me happy as a person? I don't know. I worked a lot more. I got paid, didn't get compensated for all those hours. Yeah. And ultimately, that's what made me go into a different route because I broke off from that firm after a while and then went off on my own because it made more financial sense. And so sometimes even the goal you set for yourself is arbitrary. You know, like I wanted it, and then I got there early and then was like, oh no, why did I want this? You know,
Yeah.
I'm just like working more hours and not really getting a lot more compensation.
Yeah.
So
And I think that's where we need to realize that reevaluating is not a bad thing to do.
yeah, you have to revisit. You have to come back, even if you get there or you don't get there. Like, why is that important to you? You know, and it's kind of like that thing, like jumping from a large firm to a civil rights firm. It's like, why is this important to me? You know, is it because I want to do the quote unquote right thing, or is it because it really does inspire passion in me? And so, for me, that was always in the back of my mind is like, am I doing what's right for me? Who cares what everybody else thinks? You know, when people say, how are you going to take that job? You know, as a social worker, you're not going to be able to pay your student loans. Well, guess what? My student loans can go for 30 years if they have to. You know, like I can refinance that stuff 2 times over if I want, you know, and put that down the road. As long as I keep advancing on that payment, I can do what I want. And ultimately, that's maybe not the most wisest financial decision. But for me, it was like, how can I do what I want with my life? How can I make that choice? And I think that's what ultimately brings you the most happiness, is if you're true to yourself, you're true to your instinct. Yeah.
I fully agree. And I can't thank you enough for sharing your story with us, because I was wanting to hear it myself. I've heard about you and everything as well too, but I wanted to know, you know.
Yeah.
It's incredible, the things you've been through, the things you've done. And we're coming close on the wrap-up time here,
Yeah,
but
okay.
I can't thank you enough for taking time from your schedule to be here as well too. And it's the information you gave is, regardless of who heard it, it's going to be played back again, and there's going to be that one student. It's always going to click and be like, he has a point.
Yeah.
It's like the world is bigger than Santa Cruz County, and there's nothing wrong with leaving. I mean, you might come back. You drank the water, you're coming back.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
Thank you so much for coming.
Well, you'll
and
also
sharing.
always come back at least to visit. Maybe not
That's
to
true.
live and
You
stay,
don't
but
have to
you'll
stay
always
here.
come back and
True,
visit.
too.
It's people are, and that's the one thing that I love about Nogales and Santa Cruz County, that people always welcome you back.
Oh yeah,
And that's
no doubt about it.
That's the beauty of where we live.
Los vecinos, always so kind.
Exactly.
Here. So, anything that you want to share that you've got going on that you want to tell the community?
So, you know, I was working as the judge here at the county as the justice of the peace, and now I'm pro tem judging in Patagonia. So, people should come to Patagonia and say hello, and visit Patagonia and spend some time there. It's a beautiful town. And I know we only go there usually if we're from Nogales on 4th of July for the parade.